Imagine standing on the edge of the multiverse. You're a 2-mile-tall, immortal frog, devouring shards of reality and punching your enemies into oblivion. Today, on This Mini Sucks, I'm gonna show you how to make your minis pop off the tabletop in 3 simple steps. Join me as we journey across the universe on a quest for maximum saturation.
This Mini Sucks.
In Cosmic Frog, you're stepping into a bizarre universe where giant amphibians battle for the fate of reality. It's chaotic, strategic, and fun. When painting board games, I typically shy away from grimdark or just like muddier color schemes in general. These are game pieces first, so I really want them to be readable on the game board and across the table. And using very bright and super saturated colors is an excellent way to do that. These frog minis are the perfect blank canvas to explore these concepts today. Bold and simple sculpts without boundaries, we can let the paint go where it wants and create its own interesting transitions. Sometimes you do want to be very specific with how you place your paint on a model, especially if what you're painting has an analog in the real world, if you're going for realism. But I don't really know what a 2-mile-tall, immortal cosmic frog looks like. So I think it'll be okay to just chuck some color around and let the universe do its thing. First things first, let's clean the minis. Carefully scrape the mold lines and sand them smooth. Resin dust and mold release agents can really ruin your paint job. So grab some alcohol or dish soap, water, and a soft toothbrush. Gently scrub them clean and make sure they are ready for priming. Step 1, the white undercoat. To reflect the cosmic energy of these frogs, we're going to need a bright and clean foundation for our colors. White surfaces reflect nearly all wavelengths of light. When you paint over a white undercoat with translucent paint, the light travels through the paint, bounces off the white undercoat, and travels back through the paint, giving it almost a luminous quality. In contrast, darker primers like gray or black absorb more light, so less of it reflects back through the paint. This results in the colors appearing duller and less vibrant. By starting with white, you are literally setting yourself up for the most amount of saturation that is physically possible. When priming, make sure you keep your spray even and smooth. You probably don't have to worry about clogging up the details on like chunkier board game minis like this, but spraying too fast or too close with an airbrush or spray can on a more detailed or complex model can really muddy the details. Short and thin sprays are your best bet for that perfect base coat. Step 2, color choice. It may seem obvious, but in order to achieve maximum saturation, you're going to need to use fully saturated colors to do that. Primary colors like cyan, magenta, and yellow are the building blocks of all the other hues. They are fully saturated and they cannot be broken down further into simpler colors. Spraying cyan from below and magenta from above allows the colors to blend naturally where they overlap, creating clean shading without dulling your palette. This approach preserves the natural vibrancy of the colors and creates smooth, dynamic transitions. When aiming for bold, high contrast minis like these frogs, it's all about letting the colors do the work for you. I ended up giving each frog a different combination of the primaries. That way, they all have their own look and personality, and there's no question whose frog is whose at game night. This is the most saturated the minis will be in this process. If you want to define the details more, that will require some amount of highlighting and shading, which will desaturate the colors. But there are ways to do this while still preserving as much vibrancy as possible. You can't have CMY without K, so let's add black to give our colors an anchor. Adding black to the eyes grounds the colors and gives the mini a visual structure, preventing the bright colors from confusing the details. To quickly add further definition, a dry brush will pick out the raised details. Apparently I don't take care of my brushes very well, so I ended up giving them more of like a beige dry brush. So I'm just gonna fix that real quick with a blast of white from my airbrush. All of this is going to desaturate the mini further, but again, I plan on reinforcing the colors later with glazes and washes. I like to paint my bases before completely finishing a mini, just to get a feel for what the end result will look like. You don't need to be 100% done to know if something's working or not. For these, I'm gonna pull a dark blue from the game mat so the pieces blend seamlessly into the board. I think these are really starting to look pretty sick, and they would already make great game pieces. But I want to bring back some of the saturation lost from the dry brushing and pick out some final details to really make these frogs feel complete. Step 3, glazing and shades. A lot of miniature paint jobs today start from a zenithal prime of white paint over black primer. This is a similar idea, but instead of a blend of values across the model, we have a blend of hues. Whenever you're adding paint over a color or value gradient that you want to preserve, the consistency of your paint is key. We all want to make Daddy Duncan proud. I know I do. So we are going to thin our paints accordingly. To make a glaze, no matter what medium you're using, whether it's just water, speed paint medium, or an actual glaze medium, a good baseline to start from is 3 parts thinning medium, 1 part paint, and then tweak from there. When you pull your brush across the palette, you want the paint to retract back in on itself like this. That's when you know you're in that like magical Goldilocks zone of glaze paint consistency. It's a good spot to be. Now just dunking these minis in Nuln oil or another black acrylic wash would be a mistake. A good way to make shades when working with primaries like this is to actually just mix them all together. Instead of muddying and dulling the colors like a black wash would do, this will create a more neutral tone that will be darker than your primaries, but still fully pigmented. Applying these blends over the color transitions ties them together and unifies the hues across the mini without muddying or dulling the colors too much. This will create richer color transitions and more saturated shadows. To build up the brighter colors, I will do the same thing, but instead of just adding white to brighten my primaries, I will add brighter, more saturated versions of the colors and slowly build them up in areas I want to draw attention to. Go ahead and apply the glaze in thin layers, building up intensity gradually. It may take a few minis to get the hang of it, but the good thing is when your paint is this thin, it dries very slowly. So mistakes are very easy to lick away with a clean brush. That said, if you're happy with the results and you want to lock them in, make sure you let them dry completely before applying the next layer. Thinner paints are also more fragile, so it is easier to rip them off when you paint again with your brush if they aren't fully dry. From here on out, you could probably finish whenever you felt like you were done. I mean, if you're having fun painting, keep pushing it. Take these boys to the moon. But if you just want some solid minis to bring to game night, these look sick. I mean, you don't need to go crazy with every single paint job. Every mini doesn't need to get 1 million likes on Instagram. You don't need to win a golden demon. Your friends aren't gonna care if you didn't like edge highlight to the gods or fix every last mistake. They're just gonna be stoked to play a game with you and your silly little space frogs. That's what counts. That's what matters. The time we share with our cherished loved ones and our space frogs. Since our paint jobs are pretty simple, let's just pick one key detail to make the centerpiece. To me, the obvious answer for these frogs are the eyes. By allowing our bold and vibrant colors to do most of the heavy lifting across the rest of the model, you get a lot of mileage out of just pushing the paint job a tiny bit further in one key area of interest. No board game piece is complete without a coat of varnish. This force field will help protect our cosmic frogs on their journey through the outer dimensions, as well as tie the finishes of the different paints together to keep the whole model looking cohesive. These guys are ready to be packed up and head out to game night. There is something so satisfying about seeing them painted in the box with all the other components. Hopefully these tips have inspired you to bust out that unpainted board game you have lying around and get it looking dope. If you found these tips helpful or you just had fun hanging out today, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Better do both them, Johns, actually. If you'd like to connect and support the channel further, my free Discord and my Patreon are linked below. We have a super chill community growing over there, and I would love to have you come and be a part of it. That being said, I wanted to thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!